Oh man, this is supposed to be a space game. Why are they making another ground vehicle? Oh, roar. Actually, I'm using footage of the ballista because I love to keep this footage because this is great footage. And it also illustrates one of the few vehicles that I have ever bothered to acquire in Star Citizen. This isn't something that was purchased with real money, though of course the recent wipe has removed this. This would easily be a vehicle that I would acquire again. I loved it. I loved the ballista, and the Spartan is another part of that family. It's another part of, what is it called now? The Atlas platform, right? And they're good vehicles. Now you might look at this and you might think, oh, I know what he's going to say. He's going to say, remember, you got to have a Hercules to transport this thing around. So there is a hidden and implied cost with owning this vehicle, right? You may not see it right away, but you go and you buy it and you're like, I want that. And then you realize, oh God, I got to transport it wherever I go to use it. And what happens if I don't have the ship? Something of a consideration. And so if you're planning to use it offensively, militarily, it would be a good idea if you don't have it, but maybe a member of your org has a Hercules, if you're very friendly with them, because you may need them to support your operations. But if you're doing joint missions, which chances are we are probably going to see a lot more involved missions in the future. Certainly we have seen with Pyro a certain amount of evolution in missions, though it is very incremental. Or it's not really a giant leap forward. It's a nice step forward, but I think as things get more complicated in the future, you're going to see reasons to actually have a Hercules to show up with ground troops and vehicles like this, where you may want to land that Hercules 50, 60, 100 kilometers away from your objective and then drive in the rest of the way just to help keep that Hercules safe. Hopefully when we get to a point of having missions like that, something like this in a situation like that could obviously be very handy. Now, some people might look at it and say, yeah, but the ballista has missiles. The ballista is far more competent, whereas this just has the little size 2 turret. The size 2 turret may not be a threat to something like a Nova tank, but the size 2 turret is certainly going to represent something of a challenge to something like a space bike or even a ground bike, or the name always jumps out of my head right before I say it, but the Cyclone. It's not something that is obviously meant to be a frontline offensive weapon, but is something to bring in ground support, ground troops. It's a good idea. So from that point of view, if you do have the logistical train, or you have access to the logistical train necessary to get this to your objective, it's solid. And it's, once again, it's a solid platform. I love driving this thing. I think this thing is great. Between this and the Cyclone, which I have the TR, I believe, but I love my Cyclone, and that's something that I purchased outside of game, not in game. I still have that, and I love that vehicle. Of course, the requirements to deliver that to an objective are far less than this, of course. Now, you might be looking at it and saying, well, okay, I don't have that logistical train, so not a good idea for me. But if you're planning to own, let's say, a ground base somewhere on one of the moons in Star Citizen, you may not always have access to that vehicle, but you could, of course, pay someone to transport that from wherever your, this home base is of yours, and drop that vehicle off at your ground base, where you may want to park it in the future and use this to go around and patrol or check out areas around your base. You're obviously going to put your base there for a reason. And so having a vehicle like this that, unlike a lot of other ground vehicles, actually has an enclosed interior space and storage for things like armor, weapons, tools, equipment, all that sort of stuff. This is a pretty legit vehicle. So with all those things considered, I think that when I look at something like the Spartan, the fact that it was, not flight ready, but it was delivered drive ready, it's is a great idea. It iterates on an existing platform, which allows CIG a quick turnaround time in building this and delivering what someone has purchased to them. I've always been in support of looking at existing platforms and altering them to new roles and then bringing them into the game that much faster. I love that idea. Every time I see a new discrete hull, it's just like, well, you're starting from scratch or partly from scratch with this. Even though they might have many of the assets for the manufacturer, it's still going to take longer than if they simply slapped another compartment on the back like you do with the ballista or with other vehicles. So this, along with ground vehicles like the Drake Dragonfly, the Cyclone, which is the ground bike that Tumbrel makes, I believe it's the CV is the version that has cargo modules on the back of it, and the Tumbrel Cyclone. No, wait, did I say Cyclone? I meant to say Ranger. The Ranger CV or MT. Ranger MT. Sorry. It's Star Citizen. There's literally hundreds of vehicles. I'm sorry. But the Ranger MT and the Cyclone TR are excellent vehicles. I love those vehicles. The ground bikes were a little concerning to me in the beginning, but definitely you can see how they could play a role in the future and be quite interesting if you have a base. So, in general, broad strokes, that's what I think of the Spartan. I think that it's solid. I really like it. It obviously has a niche. It does come with a requirement to transport it to where you want to use it, but depending on what you want to use it for, you may only need a few trips to get it to where you want to keep it. Or if you're someone who's in a mercenary org who's obviously going to be doing a lot of operations, chances are you have access to or have access through friends to the vehicles necessary to transport this vehicle to a mission location. So overall, logical, makes sense, love it. The Anvil Spartan, 2 thumbs up.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.